This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
Joining me now, John Brummett, columnist with the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. John, good to catch up with you as we always do each week. Thanks for being here.
Always look forward to it. Let's see what's on tap today.
Man, well, we saw quite a production in Chicago this last week. The Democrats held their national convention a few weeks after the Republican National Convention. There were some contrasting styles. I'm sure we'll touch on some of that, but just kind of tell me what your overall take was. Was it a successful Democratic National Convention in your eyes?
Yes, and kind of a fairly remarkable production. I mean, they've been, just a few weeks ago, everybody's making this point, but the Democrats were dead in the water. And just in a state of depression. And then Joe Biden pulled out, and people thought, well, we're going to have an open convention, and how's that going to play? And how do you throw together a primary or get a decision and a nominee and plan a message and a convention when in 3 or 4 weeks? They did it, and it wasn't perfect. I thought, and none is. I mean, one night, the night Clinton spoke and Walz eventually spoke, that was just a sort of a litany, just a rat-a-tat presentation of people who they were obliged to let speak, and none of them spoke very well. Clinton wasn't very good. But then Tim Walz was just sort of a galvanizing, energetic, huggable fella. And he came out and he did his job. The Obamas were magnificent the night before. The send-off to Biden Monday night was fine. But then it came down to okay, that's all the setup. It's been good. But in the end, you've got one candidate for president. She is still largely an unknown quantity, even though she's brought the joy, and the table is set, but she's got to perform, and she's got to show herself in command and engaging in presidential, and in the end it's on her. The rest of it is just supporting cast. She's got to star. And I thought, and I know people say, well, sure, you lean to Democrats. I thought she performed just about as well as could have been imagined. I didn't know she had all that in her, and I certainly hadn't seen it, and others hadn't seen it when she ran for president before she was ready, apparently in 2019, and just was horrible. But she came out in her performance of the speech, her inhabitants of the speech. She became the speech, and she touched on all the things she needed to touch on, and she did so with strength and some degree of power and eloquence. So A+. And that just completed. Now, her bump is not very big, if at all. Early polling suggests not a great bump, but she certainly didn't hurt herself. She certainly didn't, and she certainly cemented the week's message, which only she could do. So I pronounce it a heck of a week for Democrats, and a remarkable, as everyone is observing, a remarkable turnabout from where we were just a few weeks ago.
Yeah. Assess the Republican response to that. We've seen Donald Trump obviously not satisfied with the amount of attention that the Democrats, and particularly Kamala Harris, was getting last week. This was to be anticipated. And then you have on Friday afternoon the endorsement, I guess, of Robert Kennedy Jr., who's ending his independent, but I guess he's pausing. It's kind of a confusing message was sent there, but I guess just rate the Republican response and what happened there at the end of the week in terms of how you see the table being set going forward now that the conventions are behind us.
The Republican response during the week and at the end of the convention week, I didn't really see one. They began calling her more earnestly Comrade Kamala, and they're already doing that. We know we're going to get that, but I didn't see a great strong response. The Democratic Convention so engaged people and was so effective that there was there was not much room in the public consciousness for a strong Republican response. We know Trump's mad. We know he's saying ridiculous things. Now, the Robert Kennedy thing was timed, I assume. I mean, they'd been talking for a while and they'd planned this. Timed, I assume, to blunt any Democratic spin coming out or bump coming out of that convention. And it's muddied the waters a bit. And it's not insignificant. If a third candidate on the ballot in most states who was polling 3-4% endorses one of the candidates in a very close race with an independent message that might appeal to swing voters in battleground states, there's nothing bad about that for Republicans. But not all voters for a candidate who pulls out feel obliged to obey his endorsement or to pay much attention to it. I think it's kind of a muted response. But even, I'm telling you, this thing is so close, so on the edge in a few states, that even there's nothing bad about it for Republicans. It was a good thing when the election's going to come down to fractions of a percentage point in 4 or 5 states, one of which, Georgia, I think Kennedy showed a little more support than usual in. So that was about the best they could do. That was the best they could do the week up. Roll out this endorsement, even muted. It's a mitigating message. And going forth, here's what all the Democrats are so fired up, and the exuberance becomes irrational because you've had your show, you've had your moment. Now the game is on, and you're in good position, but it's going to be the same old thing. The Republicans they're just going to take her left of center record and make it more left than probably it is, and work on frightening a few voters in the center away from her. And that's what, and it's, how does she respond? How does she respond? And can she counterpunch? And then I think we got a debate, Roby, September 10.
Correct.
Right around the corner. I hate to say this again because we just had a presidential debate that was fatal, and not just consequential, but fatal. But that's just real big. That's just real big. And how derisive and offensive and bullying will Trump be, and how will she do? I'm reminded that when she debated Mike Pence, when was it? Whenever it was, it was 2020. People were saying Pence is a mild-mannered guy. She's a trained prosecutor, and she had a higher expectation, but she didn't perform notably better, if as well. So I didn't know she had it in the nomination acceptance speech, but she did. She's going to have to perform again, big time, in that. That's going to be big.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll watch the swing state polling as that comes out. The debate, as you mentioned, is a critical kind of inflection point, and then I really think it's ground game at this point in time. Beyond that,
yeah. After that, it's unless she just gets destroyed and blunders. This is a turnout election. This is and that's the Democrats' big advantage right now. I mean, I got folks here in the House, folks on the street in Arkansas saying, who do I see about where I can go to help? I got people saying that. You've probably run into people saying that too. And that's what you want. I remember when did Obama get elected? 2008. I remember late in that election, some friends of mine, women, got marching orders or got asked to go to Springfield, Missouri, and knock doors in conservative neighborhoods, just to try to. You're not going to carry Missouri. You're not trying to carry Missouri. You're just trying to produce a closer poll in Missouri and make Trump and make McCain, it was, I guess, Romney, work harder for his votes as part of this national strategy, and it ended up working. But that's what you're looking for, people willing to go do whatever they're advised to do because they are inspired. And as of this moment, there is great Democratic inspiration and some measure of momentum.
All right, turning our attention to Arkansas politics, we get a ruling late in the week from the Arkansas Supreme Court, a 4-3 decision. There were those 3 dissents. There was the 4 in the majority, kind of as expected on the abortion amendment. It will not be on the ballot. I guess analyze the court's majority decision, and I'll give you a chance to say what you want to about the minority positions in that too.
Well, thanks. Here's the first thing I will say. And I'm not accustomed to bragging on myself and saying I predicted this precisely. That's unattractive, but I predicted this precisely. I said this to you, into this camera, in this venue. It's going to be 4-3, and it's the 4 most identifiable partisan Republican justices who are going to vote to have Sarah's back and Thurston's back and Griffin's back, and it's going to be a partisan decision. And that's what it was. The 3 in the minority are not identifiable Democrats or Republicans. Therefore, I call them judges, and I call the prevailing side Republicans. It's a partisan decision, and you know, I'm sorry to say that, and I don't mean to attack justice. And I say in a Tuesday column, and I'll say here. On your garden variety appeal to the Supreme Court, these 7 people can do the job credibly, and I'm not saying that they can't. But on partisan political cases, you got the Supreme Court is made up of a former director, a recent director of the Republican Party, the wife of the director before that, Sean Womack, who was a leading legislative Republican, and then Rhonda Wood, who's running for Supreme Court with a Placer County Republican endorsement. So it's one thing to be a conservative jurist and rule strict construction. It's another to contrive ways to serve your partisan interest. And I'm not the one saying that alone. Karen Baker, the Associate Justice, who wrote the dissent for the 3, said the majority of 4 has contrived a requirement from whole cloth. It doesn't exist in order to deny the people the right to vote on this. That's the position of the writer of the dissent for the 3 other justices. So that's what happened here. I'm not calling for an insurrection. I'm not saying these guys can't do the job normally day to day, but I'm saying they've got a partisan stranglehold on the strict partisan cases. You could have gone either way on this. You could say strict construction. It says you got to have this certificate, this affidavit when you file petitions, or you can just as easily say it doesn't mean simultaneous, which is what Karen Baker said. You can go either way. In this case, you can go either way, I think, depending on your partisan predilection. And so it goes. That's where we are, and we hope maybe the abortion people will be back again, and maybe they'll file their simultaneous certificate and next time, and we can hope.
I think
that's how I see it, Roby. That's how I see it.
I think it'll be interesting politics. I've not talked to anybody on that side of the equation. I do sense that they will come back. I mean, for starters, their language is now approved by the Attorney General, so it won't be difficult for them to refile and start.
You would think not. You would think, unless he can think of something else. Yeah.
Well, put it on the ballot. I mean, start collecting their signatures here for the 26th election, when Griffin and Sanders will be up for re-election, and we'll have to campaign against it on the actual campaign trail, which I think that they will. And you'll get the benefit too, it seems to me, for the pro-abortion amendment folks, of seeing what happens, what messages flick and resonate cycle, where there's 7 or 8, I think, abortion amendments in different states on the ballot. So we'll see what happens there. So,
in defense of my position of partisanship, I just want to say it's not a. It sounds more lethal indictment than I mean, but do you remember the case last year about whether the Constitution and saying saying bills with emergency clauses, the emergency clauses had to have a separate vote. Do you remember that? The Supreme Court ruled, no, it doesn't mean that. Separate vote doesn't mean that. This time, the majority said this law that says they need to file this affidavit means what it says. What's the commonality? Service to the partisan political interest. That's the commonality of those two things. And, you asked me, that's how I feel about it. And it's not the end of justice in Arkansas. We can have Justice Day today, but we've really got a strong, hyper-partisan Republican stranglehold on the state. And they won the elections, and they get to have it if they exercise it. But the court should be a little bit more detached than it is, ideally, in my opinion. And I just wanted to add that. And I hope I don't cause you too much trouble with Republicans wanting equal time. I will surrender next Monday's podcast time, videocast to Countering Views.
But we will always offer different opinions on there. John Brummett.
I know you will. Okay.
Democrat Gazette. Thank you for being with us. I appreciate you.
You betcha. Bye-bye.